Hello gorgeous souls and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another one of my videos today. So today's video is my top 5 books that changed my life in 2023. I am an absolute self-help and fiction bookworm. I love reading so much, so I think it's always great to kind of recap on the books that we read last year and kind of the ones that really stood out to us. And I want to share with you an updated version because I have obviously shared like the books that have changed my life and the law of attraction books that have changed my life and, you know, like the books I love. And I obviously have my Amazon page, which is linked below, with all of my manifestation and spiritual book recommendations since my awakening 8 years ago. So you have that there to obviously, you know, recap all of the books I love. But I wanted to share with you today the 5 books that I absolutely loved and that changed my life in 2023, just in case you haven't read them already. But if you're new here to my channel, then welcome. My name is Emma. I'm an award-winning life coach, 3 times best-selling manifestation author, law of attraction YouTuber here on my channel, and I'm the host of the #1 spirituality podcast on iTunes, Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast. And here on my channel, I cover all things manifestation, law of attraction, spirituality, and self-help. So not only do I really hope you're going to enjoy this video, but the abundance of videos here on my channel over the last 10 years. So I have got my book stack here, although one of them is a Kindle book, so I have to put the digital cover on here, but I have always absolutely loved books. Since spiritually awakening 8 years ago and discovering the law of attraction and spirituality, self-help books, law of attraction books have been literally, oh my gosh, everything. And it's something that I really prioritize because I love reading and I see the benefits that I get from it as well. And I have so much fun doing so that last year I set myself the challenge of reading 12 books. Now, all of my spiritual book recommendations and manifestation books, law of attraction books, over the last 8 years that I've read are all on my Amazon page link, which I will put below. So every single book that I recommend that I've read will be in that link below. But I want to focus on the 5 books that really changed my life in 2023 and what I got from each book. So being an author, obviously it helps to love books. I feel like that is definitely where my book passion comes from. And for my 30th birthday last August, I got a Kindle as my birthday present from my partner, and I absolutely adore it. It has revolutionized my life. I feel like I read quicker on it than I do paperback. I can have so many more books because, believe me, every bookcase in my house is full to the brim, as you can imagine. So it just enables me to read more. And it is nice to still have paperbacks. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a good paperback. But for me, reading Kindle has been so much more just an effective way of reading and helped me to really achieve that goal. But I did actually read 13 books last year because one of them I was kind of reading throughout the year, which I will get to in a second. So it wasn't like a constant read. So I did actually read 13, and that was a mixture of fiction and non-fiction books. So I want to share with you my 5 favorite spiritual / law of attraction / self-help books that really changed my life last year. So first up, January's read was Get Rich, Lucky Bitch by Denise Duffield Thomas. So this book came so highly recommended by my spiritual pals and friends. And to be honest, I don't know why I'd never read it before. Like, it just wasn't something that was kind of on my to-read list. But last year, as I really wanted to up-level my money mindset, this was the book that I turned to on January the 1st and read throughout January. And I'm so glad I did because it was just a hugely kind of motivational and uplifting law of attraction book, again, to help me with my goal that was, you know, something I wanted to achieve throughout 2023. So I absolutely adored this book. I read it very quickly. I loved it. I don't think there was anything in there that particularly bored me or made me kind of slow down reading. There were so many great money tips and tools in there. And obviously, you know, I teach law of attraction money tips and tools as well. So it was really nice to learn new things and try different things, because I think even myself, I could witness that when you do your own methods and you do your own tools, after a while, you know, like you need to try other stuff to, you know, expand you and to expand your knowledge and awareness as well. So that's why I love reading, because it also takes me out of my little work bubble and helps me personally me to expand and grow and to learn from, you know, fellow incredible teachers. So I love Denise's work. She came on my podcast a couple of years ago, and I've actually read 2 Denise books this year, well, last year, 2023, so 2 feature in this top 5. That's how much I love Denise's work. So highly recommend this book if you want to learn more about, you know, up-leveling your money mindset, you know, attracting with the law of attraction. There is everything abundance and money mindset in this book. There's some really fun sort of like activities in there. It's not too activity based, which I think is quite nice. I sometimes love a good read instead of like loads of tasks and actions to do, just because sometimes you just want to read it and then kind of go back and do the action points. That's what I do anyway. So I loved this book because it wasn't too tasky. It was a nice balance, and it really did help to expand me. And January last year was the biggest month of the year financially, so I definitely think this book had something to do with it. So highly recommend it if you haven't read it. Highly recommend it if you want to up-level your money mindset this year. And obviously it is the year 8 in numerology collectively, so it is all about money, finances, and power. So I couldn't think of a more perfect time to read Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and really, you know, step into your power with your finances. There is some focus if you're an entrepreneur, you know, in this book as well, but it is equally as powerful if you're not an entrepreneur and you just want to read it to up-level your money mindset. Next up in March, I believe, I read Chill and Prosper, which is Denise's like next book in the series. So she had her first book, which I think is called just Lucky Bitch, which is just about manifesting. And then we had Get Rich Lucky Bitch. And then I think this is her third book, Chill and Prosper. So it was called Chillpreneur. I never actually read that one, but this is like an updated version that they basically updated it to. So it's now called Chill and Prosper. If you're confused looking on Amazon at various Denise Duffel Thomas books. So this one is the new way to grow your business, make millions, and change the world. So definitely more of a business book than sort of like an everyday law of attraction read. This book definitely was more business focused than, you know, money and law of attraction. So it felt more of a serious read, but I did actually take a lot from this. There were some great tips and tools in there to flow more, to, you know, scale your business, to really kind of relax into your business so you're not hustle all the time. So I really appreciated and loved the tools and suggestions that Denise puts in here to really create that chill and prosper vibes in your business. The only downside was that towards the end, I did lose traction with it. And I only lost traction with it because it just felt a little bit disconnected. It then got into kind of like multi-level marketing a little bit, and just kind of things that weren't applicable to my business. So for me, it wasn't that it wasn't good. It was just that it wasn't applicable to my business and what I would want to kind of do in my business. So I do actually really love this book. Marie Forleo has endorsed it. Denise is a much needed voice of practical wisdom. So I do think it's a great read. And I think if you've got a business and you're really wanting to step into flow and alignment this year instead of hustle and pushing, this is a great read. And I would definitely recommend it. Just the last bit for me just kind of made me switch off. And to be honest, I didn't read the last bit. So I did complete it in my mind because I read all of what I wanted to get out of it. But then the last few chapters, I read the conclusion, but the last few chapters just really kind of felt like it lost me. It lost me a little bit, but I still loved it. Hence why it's in my top 5. Next up, I want to say I read this. When did it come out? I feel like it came out on the spring equinox. I can't even remember. I feel like this book came out on the spring equinox last year, but I think I read it in April or May, or started to read it. So this is the book that I said I actually read throughout the year. So this is Kirsty Gallagher's Sacred Seasons. I was so looking forward to this book. I pre-ordered it months in advance because I love all things nature. Like I really wanted to learn more about nature, the wheel of the year, and just more about manifesting with nature last year. So when I saw this book on pre-order, I was like, this is going to be perfect. I love Kirsty's work. She's also come on the podcast recently. We did a Sacred Seasons episode, which you'll be able to see here on my YouTube channel from a couple of weeks back. So I loved this book. It was my first Kirsty book that I had read. And I actually really, really enjoyed it. I got so much from this, but it is definitely a book just because it walks you through every season and what you should be doing, like on the spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox, winter solstice. Then there's obviously like Beltane, Samhain, like the kind of half turning points of the season. So there's lots of really juicy content in here through learning about the seasons, learning how we can like manifest our desires but achieve our goals as well. It's not a huge manifestation book, but of course it references it. So it was good to learn, okay, this is what I should be doing at this point in spring, and this is what I should be doing on the spring equinox, and this is what I should be focusing on May the 1st, for example. So I read it in chunks throughout the year as we hit those seasons, just because otherwise I'd forget it. I would get to that season and think, what did Kirsty say? I've got no idea what the ritual is. So I actually would recap and revisit, and I folded a lot of pages in this book of like, come back to this page, come back to this bit on this date. So there's journaling prompts in there at the end of each little season / chapter, which I think is really nice, and some guided rituals to guide you throughout each season, each month, each year. So I loved this book. I highly recommend it if you want to work with nature more, if you're like me and you want to work with the wheel of the year and it intrigues you to learn more about these special points in the year, because obviously I teach and preach them in all my work of how important and how beneficial they are for us to manifest in. So if you want to take those learnings deeper, highly recommend this book. Absolutely loved it, and it was such a joy to read. So my next book was in June, I believe, and this was Diana Cooper's The Golden Age. So I read this on my Kindle because I had my Kindle at this point. I did have it as an early birthday present, yes. So I read it. It was one of the first books I read on my Kindle, and I wasn't really sure what to expect from this book because I love Diana Cooper's work. We've had her on the podcast too. Do you know what? We've had all of the authors on my podcast. What a freaking achievement. I love this. But like all the 5 books that I mentioned here. So I love Diana's work. I loved her Magic of the Unicorns book. I loved her Discover Atlantis book. That's another book I read last year as well. So I am a big fan of Diana's work. So I didn't know what to expect from The Golden Future, but it definitely intrigued me because we spoke about this on the podcast before, about the Golden Age that's coming. So it kind of really sparked my interest of, I wonder what's going to be in this book. I wonder what's coming. I wonder what we can expect, and, you know, how to make sense of the world that we have around us and what we're kind of shifting into collectively and spiritually too. So I will say the first part of the book, I think you need to be like a hardcore spiritual fan for. I did struggle with the first part of the book, only because it was a lot of Diana's predictions about what is going to happen, you know, as we move towards the Golden Age in 2032, and what life and society will look like after that. And obviously, you know, I spoke to my friend George about this afterwards, and I said, like, what were your thoughts? And, you know, we both said like how this is gonna, you know, manifest in the collective and play out is obviously, you know, no one can predict, but it I'm not sure it filled me with more faith or fear. I'm not sure. I'm still on the fence with that one. But, you know, we can always take what we want from books, and if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? That is the beauty of books and all teachings in spirituality. So I feel like you have to be like really into that kind of spirituality to like get it and to like really appreciate that first section of the book. Now I am, so I did appreciate that part of the book, and it's interesting and fascinating to learn about all the, you know, incredible spiritual beings that Diana connects to and like we can connect to, and that's going to be helping to up-level the planet. So it is a very out there spiritual book. That is what I will say. But it is great. But the second part of the book then shifts into teachings of how to embody more 5D living, and how to like, you know, bring the golden age into fruition and bring that into your life. And I actually really enjoyed that part. There were so many great little meditations and so many great tools that I've now incorporated into like my daily practice, and things that really stuck with me that have really enhanced my life. So the first part of the book nearly lost me, only because I didn't really know what to expect, but I'm used to like a self-help book. So just a kind of chapter after chapter of predictions was interesting to read. Like it 100% was interesting as it unfolded. But I feel like the second half of the book really saved it for me, where actually it was more practical and I could really start to like understand why Diana was predicting those certain things and what I could do to kind of, you know, I think it maybe just spoke to me more in a simpler way, which I could more tangibly understand. And then I was like, oh, right, that's what she means. That's how I can do it practically. That's how I can incorporate that into my life. So I would actually just highly recommend it, purely to just read the predictions, but secondly, for these incredible spiritual tools and meditations that are in there. But I did actually really love it, hence why it's in my top 5. I would read it again if I had to. And I think that there's a lot that I took from it. I just think, like, I always say, like, you have to, like, get it to get it, if that makes sense. Like, if you're someone who just dips their toe into law of attraction and you don't really dive into like deeper, out there spiritual concepts, I think it could be a very strange experience for you reading that. I think you'd be like, what on earth is happening here? So I'd only recommend it if you're like super deep down the rabbit hole of spirituality, and maybe you're familiar with Diana's work and familiar with her golden age work. I think you would really, really enjoy it. So last but certainly not least, in October, I read Gabby Bernstein's Happy Days, another guest we've had on the podcast a couple of years ago. As you guys will know, if you're a long-term follower of my channel, I love Gabby's work. I've always loved her books. I've read, I'm pretty sure, like every single one. I haven't read her first ever one, but I've read everything from Miracles Now onwards. So long-term spiritual fan of Gabby's work. And I actually got gifted Happy Days. They sent me Happy Days when it came out in 2022. So it'd been sat on my bookshelf all this time and I just didn't feel cool to pick it up. But actually, how this unfolded this year was actually divine timing of when I was meant to read it. So I actually read it on my Kindle, but I have got the paperback as well. And again, I read it in parts. I was reading a fiction book alongside it just because it wasn't the lightest of reads. And I only say that because at that time I picked it up was the perfect time, because I was unraveling some childhood trauma that was really, really deep that I had no awareness of. And it came up last summer and just hit me like a truck. So for me, I did think, is this a sensible idea, Emma? Should you be reading this as you're like doing like the biggest healing work you've ever done? You're in therapy, you're like, you know, doing the trench work of inner work. Is this going to trigger you up more? So I was really conscious of that. So actually, if you're not feeling any triggers, I would say perfect time to read it. I think I was just kind of that like gun-ho person that's like, I'm just going to do it. If it triggers me up, it triggers me up. Like, I'm already triggered with the stuff coming up, so how bad could it be? Now, there were parts in it that I did have to kind of really sit with, but I'm really glad it did trigger me up in some parts, because it shone through that really transformative time in my life, things that maybe I hadn't thought of, or things that, you know, were actually really helpful as I was going through that inner work. So a bit like Hurt, Healing, Healed, you know, I think it was perfect, the perfect accompaniment as that work was coming up, because although there isn't really tasks or actions in it, it was just a very fantastic information-based book. There were obviously a few activities in there which I really enjoyed doing, but it's not every chapter. They are very minimal in this book. But I think that's good, because I feel like this book is a very good dip your toes in, understand the concepts, understand what's coming up, spark your inquiry, and then it leads you on to some fantastic tools and resources like IFS therapy, integral families. Is it integral family? Integral family systems, I think it is, that can lead you on to some great tools and modalities that I hadn't heard of. So I loved it for the fact that it supported me in a time where I needed it to. And Gabby's story was incredibly similar to mine. And I had no idea Gabby had gone through this until my friend said to me, Emma, you realize this happened to Gabby Bernstein a couple of years ago? And I thought, no. And she was like, she wrote about it in Happy Days. And I was like, I haven't read Happy Days yet. So that friend telling me to have a read because Gabby had gone through the same thing as me was like the perfect invitation. And now I know why I had to pick this book up 2023, not this year, 2023, to support me in that journey as it came up for me in a very similar way to Gabby. So I feel like it was 100% divinely timed by the universe, and I'm really grateful that I got to read that and have that experience, and it really support me as like Gabby in my pocket as I was going through obviously other therapies and other things, working through that part of my life last year. So very grateful for that book. It was a very eye-opening book. I liked that it was, it took you deep, but it didn't make you do the work, if that makes sense. I quite liked that because obviously I do that with Hurt, Healing, Healed. I do it with my own stuff. So I didn't really need that from a book. But for someone who may want tasks and activities to do the work, you will get some from that, but I think it's just a good awareness book of great information, great awareness, and to dip your toes in. There would be other books that I would recommend, i.e. Hurt, Healing, Healed, for like the work, doing the work, and working through those things that have come up. But overall, those 5 books really did change my life last year, and I really enjoyed reading them. And I'm already enjoying reading more self-help books here in 2024, so I can't wait to share those with you next year of what books I loved this year. But I would love to know what books you loved reading last year. Have you read any of the books that I've shared today? What were your thoughts on them? Did you enjoy them too? I would love to know, so let me know in the comments. And of course, as always, all the books that I've mentioned will be linked in the description box down below with my overall all-round spiritual book recommendations as well. So thank you so much, gorgeous souls, for watching. I appreciate all your views and likes. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, because I would love to see you again soon. Don't forget to leave me a comment in the comments box down below because I reply to them all. And don't forget you can also join my free Law of Attraction support group over on Facebook, where you can join myself and other like-minded souls where we talk all things Law of Attraction and spirituality. I hope you have a fabulous week, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you all in my next YouTube video, which will be next week. Lots of love.